Have you ever stopped to think about this sort of invisible transformation that's happening? It's changing not just what we use day to day, but, how it affects the planet.
Hmm.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that, the incredibly fast-moving world of the global biodegradable plastic market.
It's a fascinating area, truly.
Yeah, our mission here is to really pull back the curtain using insights from our sources, especially some quite compelling market research. We want to reveal not just the big numbers, but the forces really reshaping this whole
The
industry.
why behind the what. Yeah.
Exactly. And let's start with a real headline grabber. According to cognitive market research, this market, it was valued at about $7.29 billion back in 2021.
Okay, a solid starting point.
Right, but hold on to that because the projection, it's set to explode to a staggering $72.84 billion by 2033.
Wow, that's quite a jump.
It really is. That's a compound annual growth rate, the CAGR of 21.15%. So, what does that massive leap actually signify?
Well, that kind of extraordinary growth, it isn't just a statistic, is it? It really tells a story about necessity.
Necessity. How so?
What we're seeing is, mounting pressure on industries, on governments all over the world, and that's coupled with this rapidly increasing awareness from consumers.
Right, people wanting alternatives to traditional plastics.
Precisely. To replace them with genuinely eco-friendly options. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it means sustainable materials. Well, they're not just a nice to have anymore.
They're becoming fundamental.
Exactly. Fundamental to how we make things, how we consume, how we handle waste. And it also shows, I think, the growing maturity of the materials themselves, like plant-based PLAs or advanced PHAs.
Which makes them more viable.
Increasingly viable, yeah, for a much wider range of uses.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's unpack this a bit more. Where is this revolution really taking root globally? Maybe we can start our journey in Europe. They were already a dominant force in 2021.
Indeed. Europe's market stood at about $2.95 billion in 2021.
Yeah.
And the projection there is $28.76 billion by 2033.
Still huge growth. What's the CAGR there?
It's growing at a CR of 20.81%. And what's really key in Europe, I think, is how policy has pushed innovation.
Right, the regulations.
Yeah. Countries like Germany, France, Italy, they're seeing immense adoption. And that's largely thanks to the European Union's pretty decisive band-aids, like the single-use plastic bans, plus their ambitious sustainability goals.
So the policy really works.
It seems so. I mean, France and Italy, for example, they're experiencing some of the highest growth rates on the continent, around 21.75% and 21.25% respectively. It directly reflects that clear regulatory framework.
And here's something I found interesting. But the rest of Europe, including several emerging markets, is actually set for potentially even faster growth.
Oh, really? Faster than the big players?
Yeah, it's projected to rise from $673 billion in 2021 up to $7.59 billion by 2033. That's a CAGR of 21.52%.
Wow, okay. So maybe a sort of domino effect from the EU policy spreading outwards.
Seems like it. Now, let's shift focus across the Atlantic. North America is also showing significant traction. It seems propelled by maybe a different mix of policy and consumer demand.
That's a good point. The drivers are a bit different.
The region's revenue was $1.95 billion in 2021, expected to hit $18.57 billion by 2033. How does its growth story compare to Europe's, where policy felt like the main engine?
Well, the United States obviously leads in sheer volume, projected to reach, $14.85 billion by 2033.
Right, the biggest single market there.
Yeah, but what's quite striking are the higher growth rates we're seeing in Canada at 21.87% CAGR, and Mexico around 21.82%.
Higher than the U.S. Interesting. So what's driving that faster acceleration?
It suggests, rapid acceleration beyond the U.S. It seems driven by a mix of things: local city bans on certain plastics, big corporate sustainability commitments,
Okay.
and just a growing consumer preference for greener products. It feels less like those top-down blanket mandates like the EU and more like a groundswell, specific industry shifts,
Right, more bottom-up and company-led, perhaps. Okay, now let's turn our attention to the Asia-Pacific region. This area, well, it truly looks set for explosive expansion.
Mm-hmm. The numbers are pretty dramatic there.
From $1.67 billion in 2021, it's forecast to surge to a massive $17.7 billion by 2033. That's an impressive 21.97% CAGR. What specific forces are really fueling that kind of surge?
Well, a huge driver is just the sheer scale and pace of development, isn't it? Across China, Japan, and especially India.
India particularly.
Yeah, India, for instance, is projected to grow at an incredible 22.83% CAGR.
Wow.
And this isn't just about environmental awareness, though that's part of it. It's deeply linked to its booming e-commerce sector.
Packaging.
Exactly, increasingly adopting biodegradable packaging and also massive investments in agricultural packaging, like biodegradable mulch films.
Which helps with pollution in soil.
Right, reduces pollution, improves soil health.
Yeah.
Plus, we're seeing Southeast Asia and the rest of APAC becoming these hubs for export-driven bioplastics manufacturing. It signals a wider regional commitment.
Okay, so a combination of domestic demand and manufacturing focus. Let's trace this surge further south now to South America, another compelling story there, it seems.
Definitely, rapid scaling happening.
Its market is expected to jump from $4.39 billion in 2021 to $4.37 billion by 2033. That's growing at a robust 22.41% COGR.
What's unique about the drivers there?
What really stands out in South America is the leading role of countries like Argentina and also the category rest of South America. Both have KVRs over 23%.
Over 23%. Very strong.
Very strong. And their success seems significantly supported by, again, the agricultural sector.
The mulch films again?
Biodegradable mulch films are really gaining traction there. And it's not just about waste reduction, it's about agricultural efficiency, soil health. It makes a strong business case in those, agrarian economies.
Makes sense. Okay, moving over to the Middle East.
Yeah.
It seems like they're still developing their bioplastics infrastructure, but we are seeing steady foundational growth.
Yeah, it's building momentum. From $0.21 billion in 2021, projected to reach $1.75 billion by 2033. That's an 18.94% CAGR. What's driving this foundational shift?
Well, the United Arab Emirates is probably the key player to watch there. They're showing a slightly higher CAGR, around 20.19%.
Okay.
And this seems largely supported by their pretty ambitious smart city initiatives, plus the green policies they're implementing, trying to diversify the economy, reduce reliance on traditional materials.
So more of a strategic, long-term play for sustainable development.
I think so, yes.
All right. And finally, let's turn to Africa. It's often described as emerging high potential. And the numbers here are really quite remarkable.
Absolutely. The acceleration is something else.
It boasts one of the fastest CGRs globally at 26.51%. The region's market is set to soar from just $0.11 billion in 2021 tiny start to $1.69 billion by 2033. What makes Africa such a high-growth frontier here?
Well, I think it's a testament to how rapidly developing regions can tackle environmental challenges head-on.
Leapfrogging older tech, maybe?
Yeah, perhaps. Countries like Nigeria, South Africa, and the rest of Africa group. They're really leading this transformation. They're confronting plastic pollution directly.
How? Through regulations.
Many are implementing stricter regulations, yeah. And also fostering community-driven waste solutions. Yeah. Often bypassing older, less sustainable approaches entirely.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, this rapid adoption, I think it indicates a strong commitment to building greener infrastructures, almost from the ground up in some cases.
So when we pull all these threads together, what does this global picture really tell us?
Well, it's clear the market isn't just growing, is it?
No, it's undergoing this massive accelerating surge. And this huge growth, as we've seen, it's fueled by this powerful mix, increasing regulations, strong brand commitments from industry.
And that rapidly expanding global consumer awareness about, environmental damage.
Right. It's a multifaceted push towards a more sustainable future, it seems.
Indeed. What truly emerges from this deep dive, I feel, is how the biodegradable plastic market, stretching from advanced packaging to innovative agricultural uses and spanning every continent, it really encapsulates the future of sustainable materials.
It's not just niche anymore.
Not at all. It's a fundamental shift happening on a global scale. And it's fundamentally reshaping supply chains and consumer choices.
It's an absolutely incredible trajectory for this market, with really profound implications for industries and, for our everyday lives, too.
Definitely. And looking ahead, maybe this raises an important question for you, the listener, to ponder. With this rapid expansion, this diversification of the biodegradable plastic market, how might it fundamentally challenge and maybe reshape traditional manufacturing processes and our consumer habits over the next decade, going far beyond just the numbers we've explored today? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, you've given us some really interesting sources on a topic that's definitely buzzing. Biodegradable plastics. Our mission here is to unpack, the market, the challenges that still exist, and what's coming next for these materials.
Yeah, it's a really important deep dive. This stuff connects directly to, well, huge environmental questions and also, honestly, the choices we make every day.
Okay, let's jump right in then. Looking at the sources, what's really pushing this big move towards biodegradable plastics? I mean, we all see the headlines about ocean plastic and microplastics. That awareness seems sky high, but is there more going on?
You're absolutely right that public awareness is a massive engine. The concern over plastic pollution, landfills, microplastics getting into everything, it's definitely driving demand for greener options. But what's really interesting in the sources is how that pressure translates into, well, actual policy.
Wow.
Yeah, something like 170 countries are looking at or already have bans on single-use plastics. And many are offering incentives like subsidies to boost these biodegradable alternatives. So it's not just people wanting it, it's governments actively pushing it too.
So it's a kind of pincer movement, public demand and policy pushing together. And where are we actually seeing these materials pop up in the market?
Exactly. And it's spreading out. You've got the obvious things like food wrappers and disposable plates, sure. But also agricultural films, the ones they lay on fields. They can break down right into the soil now. Plus things like 3D printing materials, even some medical uses. It's all part of aiming for that circular economy idea where materials break down safely instead of just piling up.
That sounds like, well, pretty significant momentum, but I guess it can't all be easy sailing. What are the big roadblocks the sources point to? I'm thinking about cost, for instance. Is that still a major factor?
Oh, absolutely. Cost is a huge restraint. The sources suggest production can still be like 2 to 4 times more expensive than traditional plastics. That's partly immature supply chains, specialized processes, things like that.
Wow, 2 to 4 times. That's substantial.
It is. But it's not just the cost. A really big hurdle is infrastructure, or the lack of it, really.
How so?
Well, many of these plastics, even if they say biodegradable or compostable, they actually need very specific conditions, like in an industrial composting facility, to break down properly.
Okay.
The problem is, as one report highlights, maybe less than 15% of cities globally even have access to those kinds of facilities.
So wait, you could buy a compostable cup, put it in your garden compost,
Yes.
thinking you're doing good, and it just sits there.
Pretty much. It can just sit there for ages. That creates loads of confusion for people, right? And it kind of undermines the whole environmental benefit if they don't break down as expected.
Yeah, that's a huge disconnect.
Exactly. And then there are still some performance issues, like some types might not handle heat as well or aren't quite as tough or durable as conventional plastics.
Right.
Innovation's closing that gap, definitely, but it still makes them unsuitable for certain things, like car parts or building materials where you need serious strength and longevity.
Okay, so despite those pretty significant challenges, cost, infrastructure, performance, what's the future looking like? The sources mentioned some exciting stuff, especially around truly bio-based materials, maybe even ones you can compost at home.
Yeah, the future really is about innovation tackling those hurdles head on. Companies are pouring money into R&D using different feedstocks, think cornstarch, sugarcane, even seaweed.
Seaweed, interesting.
Right. These not only break down more naturally, but also tend to have a much lower carbon footprint just to produce them. And the polymer science itself is taking leaps. We're seeing things like new biopolymer blends or adding tiny cellulose nanocrystals from wood pulp, which boosts strength and flexibility quite dramatically.
So they're getting stronger, more adaptable, and properly degradable.
That's the goal, yeah. Getting closer to performing like traditional plastics, but with the environmental benefits, addressing those durability concerns we mentioned.
And is industry buying in?
Massively. Big global companies, food, fashion, e-commerce, you name it, they're setting really ambitious sustainability targets. They're committing to using more biodegradable materials in packaging, in their products. That kind of large-scale commitment, it really accelerates both the science and getting it out into the market.
Well, this has been a fascinating look through the drivers, the very real restraints, and the genuinely promising future for biodegradable plastics. It's clearly a mix of, huge potential and tricky realities.
Absolutely. And it leaves a thought, maybe for you, the listener, to chew on. With all this rapid innovation and these big corporate shifts happening, how might the kinds of biodegradable products available actually change your everyday habits, your choices, and even how you deal with waste, perhaps even in just the next few years? It really shows how quickly this crucial area is evolving.